what we recommend is that whatever you do, be the best at it. And some people may frown upon transactional selling. And like, look, folks, if the website experience is the best experience ever, it is a great experience. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's a great sales experience when you can click, boom, ship, it arrives the same day. If you do that, then be the best at it. If you're solution selling, look, if you don't have a highly competitive product, is like 15 others in the market, then pick a feature and be the best at solution selling. Absolutely.
Hello, Sales Nation, and Will Barron, host of the Salesman podcast, the world's biggest B2B sales show where we help you not just hit your sales targets, but really thrive in sales. And with that, let's meet today's guest.
Hi, my name is Jacco vanderKooij. I'm the founder of Winning by Design, a company that I started because I felt that modern sales approaches were lacking a customer-centric approach.
On this episode, with the legend that is Jacco, we're diving into the scientific steps of the sales process. We're diving into the moments that really matter within the sales process, the ones you should really focus on, and a whole lot more. So with that said, let's jump into today's show. So today I want to dive into the scientific selling process. And I want this to be a high-level episode for the audience that I can point them to, because I get asked about the selling process all of the time from the audience, from emails, from tweets, from all places. So before we break down perhaps the different types of selling that we can do within the different stages, the consultative approach, etc., and we'll get into that in a second, what do we need to go through to take the customer from they've got a problem to hopefully their problem solved, I guess, starting with awareness?
Yeah, so, like I want to get, there was a model called AIDA. That is, we're going back all the way to the late 1800s. And that model has been used, and in many cases, still a form of that is used in marketing and sales. Now, what we use customer stages. I'm going to first take you through that. Stage number 1, awareness. Become aware of the problem. Second stage, education. You educate yourself on what the problem actually really entails, the impact of what it has, and the solutions and the impact that has. And then you go through a selection process. Now, most companies stop there because then after the selection process, they're done. But as we know in today's recurring sales, there's like 3 more stages that are very important. Stage number 1, onboarding. Get the customer to actually see the product in full function, delivered on time, within budget, and works as promised. After that, we need to make sure that the impact that was promised is delivered. I bought this product in order to help me solve something. Does it actually do that? And the final stage is growth, growing alongside the customer. And these are the 6 stages: awareness, education, selection, onboarding, achieving impact, and growth.
So I want to dive into the goals that we should have, the to-dos that we should have in each of these stages briefly. Then we can narrow in on any that are real important for a modern B2B sales professional. But before that point, you said that typically we go from education to selection, and then we go see ya because we get our commission check on the fact that they've signed the dotted line. It seems that consultative selling might go a little bit more into the onboarding and helping people cross that chasm of, okay, I've paid my money, where the heck do I get started? And I know for me, when I was in medical device selling, there was less reoccurring revenue. There was a few service contracts that would tack onto the end of things. But my next deal would come from typically the same surgeons that I've just sold to. And so I was doing the whole process from awareness all the way to growing the account. I would get one camera system in there, and I'd hopefully 4 years later, I'd end up with a big theatre refurbishment as all the technology had gone out of date and it needed replacing. So for the typical, maybe not the typical, for the high-performing modern B2B sales professional, what sections should they be proactively trying to cover? What areas do they need to start from and kind of end up in?
Okay, so I have to take your cue, but let me lead with the following. If I already know what I want, pretty much, I even know the product, and I already know the product, the price, and so on. I typically am searching on a website, and I'm just looking for best price, best shipment. Right? We call that transactional selling. And that means that as a customer, I know what my problem is, I know what my solution is, I know what my decision criteria are. I went through that all myself. Transactional selling, aka online, Amazon-like selling. Number 2, some people they know kind of like what the solution is, but there's 2 or 3 options. Now, what they do, they're going what we call solution selling. Now, solution selling is often recognized because the salesperson doing it, they listen to the customer describes the problem that they're having, and every time the customer describes the problem, they say, oh, but we have a solution for that. Here's how we would solve this, right? Now, that is very common, and sometimes some people may call it feature selling or feature benefit selling. And many say you cannot do that. I'm saying, no, 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 no. Sometimes you actually can do that. And let me tell you when and why. If you developed a very specific feature and you're in dead-on competition with a specific competitor, please sell that feature. By all means. That's why engineering spent like, I don't know how many million man years on to develop it in solution selling, meaning the customer knows the problem they're having, they know the very well what the solution they're looking for, and it is between you and another. I can live with that. I don't have a problem with that. Where the problem comes is if customers don't know exactly what solution they're looking for. In solution selling, you're dependent on the customer figuring out what the solution is. And obviously consultative selling, which I think many of your listeners are very comfortable with, that has been the longest place in time that was there. Now, consultative selling, you need to know how you're going to, you need to know what my problem is. Now, Will, how are you going to find out what my problem is?
I'm going to call you up and have a chat.
And then chat. And what are we chatting about? And what are you going to do during chatting to figure out what my problem is?
I'm going to do discovery questions. I'm going to suss out where your pain points are.
You're asking my question, discovering my pain. Typical example of a consultative sales cell is where you ask me questions. Now, here's where consultants, and these are a few very important details. Consultative also, like you correctly say, it doesn't end at the close exactly. It doesn't say, bingo, jackpot. And essentially, every consultative sales expert wants the customer to have a successful installation. Now, the reason why they want this, Will, is because most consultative salesperson, the number one product they're selling is themselves. And they do that for a reason. It's not a bad thing. I'm not going to frown upon it. They do that because what they essentially are selling is a trusted relationship. If they say it works, the customers trust them. And then because they're closing so many big time deals over their career, they can't lie, cheat, and steal to the customer. So they essentially want to make sure, good consultative salespeople want to make sure that what they sold them during the sale is delivered as promised. It needs to work. However, it still is dependent on the customer figuring out what the problem is. Now, forms of challenger selling, we call it provocative selling. Provocative selling really is there to tackle and say like, hey, what if you don't know what your problem is? Now, the reason why provocative selling is so popular these days is because provocative selling sells very well for an innovative solution. An innovative solution, I can't write an RFQ yet around the features because they don't exist yet. It's too innovative. And therefore, provocative selling is extremely often used or very often used in innovative solutions that have to educate the customer on looking at the problem differently. Okay, now, with challenger selling, you go through all the same places, you're all the way up at the problem, educating the customer what the problem is, provoking them into action. Then you may end up doing a little bit of consultative selling and diagnosing further. You may even do a little bit of a solution sell. And towards the back end, you try to deliver and achieve, like the customer successful using the product, right? These are like the stages that are commonly, and that describes transactional selling, solution selling, consultative selling, and provocative selling.
For the salesperson who listens to this and they're going, okay, I fit in one of these 4 categories. What category do they want to be in if they want to have a sales job in 5 years' time, if they want to maximize their earning potential, and if they want to, I guess, take the leap from pesky, calling, annoying salesperson into a role where I guess it's more of a business development role. It's more of an almost an entrepreneurship role, a more entertaining and interesting role. Which of these has the best bang for buck for, I guess, all of these categories? The
right answer is all of them have. What we recommend is that whatever you do, be the best at it, at that thing. And, some people may frown upon transactional selling. And like, look, folks, if the website experience is the best experience ever, it is a great experience. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's a great sales experience when you can click, boom, ship, it arrives the same day. That's an amazing sales experience. So absolutely, if you do that, then be the best at it. If you're solution selling, look, if you don't have a highly competitive product, your product, is like 15 others in the market, then pick a feature and be the best at solution selling. Absolutely. Now, what we find is that if you become a consultative salesperson, you essentially also have to learn how to do solution selling. You cannot just say, I'm just a consultative salesperson. No, when the moment comes to compete, you need to be able to move into and to change the stance and go to solution selling based against a competitor. Likewise, as a provocative salesperson, you also need to be able to do consultative and solution selling. And so what does this make? From this perspective, what is the most complicated, therefore, what is the most complicated sales methodology that I described? What is the one that you think?
The provocative salesperson, because they're covering the most ground?
Exactly. Hold that thought. Okay. Now, so provocative works there. Okay. So now, next thing, I am now saying, hey, provocative can be really well used to break open an account via a cold call, right? Because you are essentially provoking. Now, in what you're doing in consultative selling is you're diagnosing the customer through a sequence, question-based sequence technique, right? I'm asking you sequences of questions and learn that. With provocative selling, if I'm talking to a CXO, they don't want to be questioned by like, why? So you need to solve that with research. So all the discovery that you did in consultative selling by asking questions, in provocative selling, that ground needs to be covered by extensive research. 10K statements, public statements, watching videos. Now, may I ask you, in a modern sales, let's say in a SaaS company, who does in generally do the cold outreach? What kind of role and title does performs that?
So a sales development rep, SDR.
Sales development rep. Now, are they the most senior person on the team, or of across all the sales expertises, are they the most junior?
So I've no experience with this whatsoever, but from the podcast, seemingly they're the most junior.
Okay, so now what we have is we have the most junior person on the sales team who needs to break it into an account, who needs provocative sales expertise to do that, which is a technique that for most people is the most complicated. Hence the problem that we are experiencing in sales outbound and outreach. And hence that so many organizations believe, you know what, why don't I just go for a capacity solution? I'm just going to send 1,000 emails in the next 20 seconds. Because the other thing is way too hard. Yes, and that fortunately in my case, that approach has come to an end. And nowadays, actually, salespeople, the volume approach doesn't work. You need to know what you're talking about.
And final thing on this, because you brought this up, and I wanted to touch on it before we get into what we should be doing in each of these sections, if we are doing each of these sections, which we may or may not be doing. Moving forward, 24 months, 5 years, are there any impending doom moments for anyone who is covering awareness, SDRs, people like this? So you mentioned that spamming emails is no longer going to work. I don't think it perhaps ever worked until, Aaron Ross clearly did fantastic work with his predictable revenue model, which spammed a lot of emails, or the interpretation of it is that nowadays people spam a lot of emails. And I know I have zero budgets for anything in my organization, but because I have managing director in my LinkedIn profile, I have people spamming emails to me, asking me for meetings, for calls, to buy automation, to buy SaaS software, to do all this. And clearly they've done no research on me whatsoever, because they'd see that the company has 0 employees. If they looked online, they'd probably be able to pick up some kind of track record of revenues and things like this as well. So I'm living what you're describing here, Jacco. But the question is, are there any new software? Is AI going to come in? Is automation going to come in? And is it going to wipe out, for example, the awareness or the education piece? Should salespeople...
Well, you bugged the living crap out of me with that. So I gotta, okay. Look, and you said it right. I already was a beautiful setup. Is that you set me beautifully up, okay? Here's what it is. When you think about tools, you think about them helping the person do something more, right? Now, what we find in today's sales organization, that the number, like, it is not like an exception. This is the norm by 99% of the time. What we find, the 99% of the time, if sales results are flailing, we blame the person. And we don't do that in one company. We do that in nearly every company. Okay? Now, James Reason is a researcher, a professor who researches. He says, like, look, if with such clear numbers, it is not a people problem, Will. It's a process problem. We're executing the wrong process. Now, what you're then saying is, oh, well, can a tool solve this? Look,
I'm not asking. Let me just push back for a second. I'm not saying can a tool solve this. I'm saying, will websites, for example, become across the board that sophisticated that we won't need to do the education piece because the content will just be that incredible in 5 years' time, because it'll have to be, because the competitor's website will be that educational, that'll be taken off the plate of the salesperson. So rather than will a tool help us out, will something come along, be it education, be it online platforms, be it everyone's content marketing, will become that incredible that that'll be taken off the plate for a salesperson, if that makes sense.
Okay, so let me take you through it step by step on how to solve this correctly. If we know that the lack of sales results is not the reason we use one, and it's not people, but we do know that it's essentially we're executing the wrong process, whether that's an inbound process or a wrongly executed outbound process. But we're executing the wrong process. Okay, now if that's the case, then we can use tools and enablement and people to execute the right process, right? Now, what we have to learn is to determine what is the right process. Now, for many folks, the right process can be very complicated. It's like, are we talking ISO 9000? And so I've learned to bring this message across in a little simpler manner. Now, when you had a great sales experience somewhere, I think any of us will remember, like, oh yeah, that was a great experience. And what we remember is we don't remember the entire process. We remember a great moment, whether that is, when you bought a gift for your partner, whether you had you bought a TV, but there was a particular moment that stood out. We call these moments that matter. Now, I believe that what we've looked at for far too long is we don't look at the moments that really matter to a customer. We're really looking at the moments that matter for the salesperson. If we take a look and we see like, hey, can we just make a change on a good moment that matter, then we can benefit that moment. And the listeners from the previous podcast, you may recall how I brought up that point of trading over negotiation as a key point, one of those key moments. So the process essentially should be one or two few key moments in your process that you simply simply excel at. What I want you to avoid, which is what most people are doing with these processes, is they're helicopter parenting their customer all throughout the circle. They're like, okay, look, he opened the email. He went to slide 14 and he was 36 seconds on there. It must be, they must be ready. Like, there's no good going to come out of that kind of selling. What is going to go, and you obviously from your MedTech, and as we spoke about it last time, what you very cared about is diagnosing and learning and asking questions. That was a moment that mattered for you and the customer. And obviously, let's hope that the customer really enjoyed listening to you and when you showed up and you gave them that great experience. That's a moment that matters. What we believe is focus on those key moments, and that truly makes a difference in the sales process.
So if we went through the awareness, education, selection, onboarding, impact, and the growth elements of this, are there any, or could you give us an example or a key standout moment for each of these, so that as the audience are going through these sections consciously, or as the day goes on, if they listen to this on their way to work, they can go, right, this is, Jacco said I need to focus on this in this area that I'm working on right now with this customer. And are there any examples of moments that matter that you can give us for all or a couple of these sub-segments of the sales process?
Yes. In the previous, we talked a lot about the ones that led up to the sale. So I'm now going to start off with that point and say, like, look, one of the very big moments that people don't get is, like you and I are negotiating on a Friday. And on a Friday, if I'm the buyer, I wouldn't be willing to let you know, Will, I got $20,000 more budget than you're asking for, right? Right as we're closing. And the reason I won't do that when we're negotiating, if I'm the buyer, because I would give up leverage to you as the seller, right? Now, the deal closes on a Friday afternoon. On a Monday morning, our relationship essentially has changed. We're no longer adversaries. We never were adversaries in the first place, but we're no longer sitting on opposite sides of the table. Maybe that's a good way of looking at it. You're my best friend. I need you to make me successful. I go, Will, what can I do to help you? Do I need to call on? Now, most salespeople then leave the room and say, like, well, thank you very much for the purchase order. I got 50 more to close. No offense. There's no bad intent in there, right? It's not like they're doing this because they're not interested. They're just like very busy. They got big quotas to hit and growing numbers. Well, Will, when you hit the ball with a tennis racket, do you stop when you hit the ball?
You follow through, Jacco.
Follow through. And with the golf, the same thing. And why do you do that?
I've no idea. I assume it makes it more accurate.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You swing through to make it more accurate and also to avoid injury. But the great thing is, like, are you as a salesperson still having a meeting, following through the deal, and redoing the deal with a lot more information that you have right now, and reestablishing the impact that the customer wants to do? Really key moment. Swing through the deal or sell through the close. It's a really key moment that in sales that salespeople don't do. Most salespeople don't do. What that means is that you have to have a meeting days subsequent to the deal, closing the deal or committing mutual commitment of the customer, and you essentially do over, and you're trying to make sure, are there other people involved? Who do I need to know? Who do I need to meet? Does our CEO need to meet your CEO? What impact by which day is needed? So that's really a key moment. Second key moment, after the deal is now gone live, a few, like maybe days later, hours later, a month later, this another key moment occurs. We call this the impact moment. Now, most customers are looking at success of their product, a determination of how much the customer usage. Usage is a great indicator of success. However, usage is a self-reflecting, product pitch. Like, hey, they're using my product. My product must be good. The customer doesn't pay you for their employees to log in 12 times a day. That's not what they pay you for. So usage actually is a really odd metric to look at. What we need to look at is, hey, I bought you to impact my problem. We should pay vendors for how they impact it. Now, this is a really different perspective. Previously, we paid for the value. Value is the promise of impact. But today, most products are operational immediately. When I step into an Uber or any other rideshare, I don't step in for the promise of being delivered. I don't even step in for the water and the nice chat. The only thing I want out of that ride is be delivered within reason on time at the right location, right? I buy the impact. Customers buy impact too. Now, what we do, we generally have many customers set up what they call a quarterly business review, or many, and what they do with a quarterly business review when they set that up, they call the customer every quarter and say like, hey, how am I doing? Are we doing great? I'm nothing against that. I'm aware that if you're a reasonable sized enterprise company, that you probably have 50 to 100 vendors who want to do that with you. And that essentially is about 2 weeks of nothing but vendor calls in order to see if they're happy, right? So I'm not against it. Let me turn that into a magical moment. Remember after the onboarding, right? I told you right after the deal committed, I was going to call you up and we're going to have that meeting, right? In that meeting, Will, I'm going to ask you, in this case, you're the customer. I'm going to ask you, Will, do you have meetings with the executive team every month?
I certainly do. We sit down around a big, beautiful wooden mahogany table and have a expensive cup of coffee.
And when is that? Is that like, first Monday of the month, or what is that?
Yep, first Monday of the month.
First Monday of the month. Okay. Now I know that. Here's what I'm going to do. By knowing that you have first Monday of the month, I know also that what are you doing if you're an executive and responsible for a division or for a group or for a team? What are you doing over the weekend when that Monday is due on Monday?
Probably shitting me pants and cramming all the numbers together to make myself look good.
Okay, so now I know that is the case because it's the case for everyone. What do? On Thursday, I send you a beautiful chart with the impact that the product has delivered till date. If I send you a beautiful chart on Thursday/Friday with that material, there is a likelihood that you copy and paste that into your document. It is not the quarterly business review that matters so much. It's the impact that matters. And me now learning to swing through the deal, taking on that cue early on, and then sending you the material right before you need it. Now that, my friend, is what I believe is selling. And selling it not as I'm making you buy. Selling is I'm helping you achieve the impact that you set forth when we started to talk in the first place.
So 2 things on this. I've got them both jotted down because I don't want to lose my train of thought with them. The first one, this is fantastic. So I don't do it as sophisticated as how you outlined then, Jacco, and this is something that's a question I need to start asking myself. But with the podcast sponsors, I send them, I use the word beautiful, but what I send them is a really, truly beautiful PDF with all the statistics, all the click-through numbers, comments that I've got on because a lot of the time the audience, clearly they're using very literally the products that I advertise on the show, because most of them are sales enablement, CRM products, whatever it is. They're for salespeople, so they're using them. So they'll sign up via whatever link I share. Then they'll give me feedback on the product. If it's great, they get a testimonial, whatever. If it's crap, I give the feedback. And I put this into a PDF document. And 2 months after the sponsorship period is finished, we usually start with a kind of 4-week period, 12 episode sponsorship. I feed that back to the individual that I've been dealing with within the organization. Clearly, I try and get it as high as up the organization as I possibly can. That has led to more people going, okay, we'll do another month out of the blue than any kind of sales follow-up email that I've ever sent, any call that I've sent to say, hey, how did it go on your end? Do you want to do another month? Me just sending that one document. And I can only imagine, as you shared there, Jacco, that it starts to get shared around, because the goal of the document, from my perspective, is to make the person, the buyer, the individual that kind of placed the purchase order, is to make them look good, so they can go to their boss and say, hey, I did this. We took this experiment. We've never done podcast advertising before. We never used this marketing channel. It did well. It got a strong ROI. Here's all the data from the podcast themselves. Here's a bunch of feedback on the product. And so my goal is to make them look fantastic through it. And obviously there's a motive behind it, selfishly, to drive more business moving forward. I'm not doing it out the goodness of my heart. As much as I would like to say that, that'd be a lie. But yeah, that has led to more emails, calls immediately as that document gets delivered by email that go, we'll do another one. Versus It's always been a battle after that point to get people to come back on board, even if they have seen a strong ROI, because they're busy.
First of all, good on you that you do that. That is, that's essentially what I would recommend. I'll generally I have a tendency to put some, like Red Bull on it and see if I can like light it up a little bit. So, like when you give me metrics, I want a few things to know. First one I want to know is, what is the trend line? The trend line is, how have I done over the month, and why was there a certain spike somewhere at a certain point? Now, obviously, when the episode went live, there could be a spike, but was there another spike 3 weeks later, right? So that's one. Second thing, I want to have a gap analysis. Gap analysis says, like, we were trying to achieve 1 million and we only got 980,000, right? Then what I want to do, I want to make sure I benchmark based at your competitors. You were better or worse. You did great, right? And so that's a third one. And then you have a performance analysis. These are 4 different data points that you can write underneath the data and say, like, hey, you did great. Like, your trend is up. Benchmark is still below competitors. Like, you probably need to do a recommendation X, Y, Z. And gap analysis, you're falling short. Benchmark, you're here. Performance analysis, we actually, it delivered more successful, whatever, installs, or whatever you wanted than you thought. So you're tapping into a good point. What you're doing, Will, with that is you're not only providing them the data, you're lending them your insights, because you see these reports day in, day out, and you recognize what is good or bad. What I challenge not you with, but anybody else like you with, is, would you be willing and able to tell the customer if it wasn't rosy, and if it didn't work out, would you be able to give the customer an honest opinion? And if so, and the customer, and it was your fault, like it was the wrong topic or whatever, what would you do to remedy it? Right? And that is that to me is, once you start that process, which is the reason that most people don't give this data to that level of extent, because they don't know how to remedy it. I have yet seen that any customer, if you tell them, because we do tell the customer that in some cases, and when we say it's our fault, I have yet to have a customer who ever asked their money back. What they do say is, okay, no worries. How can you help me then? That's one of those moments that matters. You admitted that you didn't deliver the impact as was promised. Then what you do builds the long-term relationship. Why some customers are only there for 3 months, and why some customers are there for 5, 6, 7 years. That, I believe, that again, that to me, that's true sales. And I pursue a life, a career. I pursue, to express my passion to people and say, like, look, that to me is what we need to teach people about sales. Not all the other stuff, sending emails, setting up calls, and close, jump on stage like a Grant Cardone, shove it down their throat, take no for rejection. No way. For me, this is a trade. It's a profession. It needs to be taught, can be taught in schools. There's science behind it. It's important that we relay that to the next generation of sales professionals.
So I've got a question for you, selfishly, and hopefully the audience will get value out of this. If not, tough, and I'll take a ton of value out of this. So there's only been one sponsor we've had on the show that didn't perform as well as I'd hoped, and I offered them a refund. They said, don't give us our money back, just give us another month of advertising, and that balanced everything out. So that then built a relationship. It showed that I was happy to there's probably a saying, I think it's like eat your own words, or however it was put across.
Drink your own champagne.
Drink your own champagne. So, and then that built a deep relationship. That person in that company actually moved to, I won't say who it is because I'm in the process of dealing with them at this other organization. I don't want to make it look like we're doing stuff behind the scenes, but that person moved on to another huge company that we do a lot of business with, and we're having great success working through a new deal with them. So that bit of humbling, that because all I say is basically, and this is very easy for me to say, because it costs about $5,000 to sponsor the show for a month. Anyone who's interested, not in sponsoring the show, but from the audience perspective, they go on our website. We've got a media kit, and you can see kind of what we're doing behind the scenes. If you have an entrepreneurial element to your kind of mindset, and you're thinking about starting a podcast, it's all up there. It's all public. I'm all very public about it. It's very easy for me to offer a very strong return on investment because typically the software that's being advertised on the show, they only need 1 or 2 decent sized customers and they smash that. So what I offer people is if you don't get a strong ROI, essentially we give you your money back. And I said, I've only had to offer it once. And they said, keep your money and we'll do another spot. But what I want to ask you, Jacco, is, and some of the audience might have this problem as well. And it seems like this is something that you can solve or you've been through. I have lots of data from my side on how many people click on the link, the audience, how many people go through from me to them, from me to the advertising page. What I don't have without asking for it is how many people have signed up, the ROI that they've had. Clearly, I don't have a way to plug into their backend, their analytics. So I have to send, and typically it's a weird chain of emails of me saying, hey, I want to check whether it's working, whether we're helping you, whether this is high on your priority list, whether we can make any changes, whether we've driven strong ROI for you. Can you tell me how many sales has been made? How many, your lifetime average customer value, so I can suss out kind of the back end revenue that you'll get from this deal. And some companies are like, yep, great, we'll tell you all that. That's not a problem. Some companies don't want to share that information. So for me to offer insights, I'm only offering insights on half of the data that would be useful for me to offer insights on. So long story short, Jacco, for me to offer these insights, for me to put across this beautiful document, for me to really help them out, go the extra mile, what would be the strategy, or how would I go about asking these individuals for data from their side to be more collaborative on all of this? And this is after the deal's been done. This is after the check's been cashed. How do I get them to kind of, because as I said, some people do, some people don't. How do I get them to collaborate more easily with the data on their side?
Okay. There's the few ways of doing this. There's, and I think it's 3. I may end up at 2 or I may end up at 4, but I'll just start off. Okay. It's okay. So number 1, you can ask. Now, when they don't give you this, I would say 7 out of 10, maybe 6 out of 10. It's not because of ill will, it's because they don't have the data. Okay, so I would say, understanding what their real problem is and therefore asking it, they don't have that answer to give to you and they will not going to say that. They're not going to tell you, oh, I don't have the data. They're going to probably say, no, I'm not, that's not needed. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Number 2, what you can do, you can make an assumption. Now, if you are, let's say you drive traffic to me, right? And let's say, you go to our website and our average price is, we have an organization that trains and assesses companies and sets up sales processes. And let's say our starting rate is 25K. Now, let's say that, you drive 50 MQL, what we call MQLs to me. You drive 50 people go to our website. And you ask me, what is your conversion rate, in generally? Oh, our conversion rate is whatever, 10%. Well, if you drive 50, then how many deals did you drive? 10%? 5. Yeah. Times 25K is 125K. You make that assumption. Notice that we brought you. Now, you do this on assumptions, right? Looked at your website. Average price was this. You gave it a conversion rate. That's resulted. Assumptions are good. Now, as long as some customers will but then challenge your assumption, saying, no. Well, you don't convert at 10%, buddy. You convert at 15%. Okay, boo-hoo. 15% times, whatever. Still 4.5 deals, still pretty decent, right? So I'm like, okay, still not too bad. Now, so assumption is great. The other thing that you can do is if the customer doesn't give you that data, you can say how others in your market have performed. And so you say, it's like, look, although you don't have the data, I get that. Here's how others have performed. And that generally gives them an idea on what they're at. And so now you can say others in your industry with a similar product based on this, it represented this impact. In this case, it's a form of an assumption, but it's an assumption of a real life scenario that rather than using their own product, you use their peers in the market product. Knowing you and knowing, like honestly, I know that you deal with a lot of customers, so you have a reasonable depth of data right now that you can compare some people with, and these metrics are like essential to them to have. Whether that's exactly like that, it's fine. They will replace your assumption with their metric, and then they will go like, oh yeah, I see, that works. So those were three. You ask, which you generally don't get because they don't have it. You place an assumption, or third one, you put in a benchmark on how others in a similar industry have performed.
The assumption element of this, oh no, let me take it back. The fact that they don't have the data themselves is, I could feel myself relaxing as you said that, Jacco, and clearly people are coming up with excuses so they don't want to look silly on the phone or over an email. But if I'm dealing with anyone from a CMO to more specifically someone who's doing demand generation, well, maybe they don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, and maybe it's not part of their job to go and suss out all the back end of things. And so they're not going to go and run it when they know that they've bought traffic at a reasonable rate and they're happy enough. So that solves my anxiety on that. I could literally feel my shoulders dropping of like, oh, that makes total sense.
Yes, it does. And, and I just tapped over my camera, so that is just slowly rebuilding. But yes, that totally does. That is the reason why I want you to use that assumption.
And final thing on this, Jacco, and then we'll wrap things up. So we've got our process of awareness, education, selection, onboarding, impact, and growing or growth. Is there any reason why a buyer would go forward one step and then backwards one step and then forwards two step and backwards one step if we're doing our job correctly? Or is that a sign that things have gone to shit, that there's a problem, there's an error, we've screwed up? Should it be as seamless as the buyer goes through each one of these steps and then we get an excited email at the end of it of how fantastic we've been and how useful we've been to serving their business and their organization? Or is there more leeway than that in all of this?
Okay, so essentially, there's a lot more leeway, and let me just, buyers go back and forth. Your first buyer comes to you, right? And when they come to you, they say, oh, I have a problem. Then you take them to the education site. Will has educated me. There's several solutions. And you know what? Actually, the Salesman podcast is the solution. I'm going to take a look at that. Then they're going to introduce their peer. Now, while the buyer that you deal with, let's call her name Jennifer. Jennifer really liked it, and she's all the way ready to make her decision. Like, I like what Will said there. But at the same time, the new buyer she introduced, like Juan goes like, Juan is still in the, is there a problem kind of mode. Jennifer is already like, hey, Will is the solution kind of mode. No. Now, if Juan is still in the, oh, I have a problem kind of, is there a problem kind of mode? What would you do? Jennifer is with you on the call. She just introduced the next person, Juan. Juan is sitting next to her on the call. And you now need to say, oh, Jennifer is in the, Will is the solution. Juan is the, I don't even know, I have a problem. What would you do?
I guess I'd try and recap with Jennifer on board and then bring Juan up to speed.
Who better than you could recap that's on the call?
Jennifer.
So you ask Jennifer, since you brought Juan in, perhaps, you can explain to him why we're here and what we've done so far. And you can prompt Jennifer with a few questions. Now, Jennifer, you came to us with this problem, and Jennifer then kickstarts it. You let Jennifer take the customer through those stages of the journey. Now, that is, you learn over the years how to do that with certain sales skills and prompting certain questions. You don't want to lead the witness, so to speak. You don't want to literally put words in this case, Jennifer's mouth. You just want to make sure that Juan hears from a person in their own lingo or and along their own process, the reason why they picked you. And I think that, or why you ended up in being the solution mode. That is a good understanding. That's a skill that can be taught. What we see, and I make this point, to your audience, what we see is almost everybody assumes that skill is known by a person. And I would say almost no one masters that skill to the level they should, let alone practice doing it. This is the reason, we currently see a new generation entering in sales. This new generation, younger generation, they actually are looking for turn-by-turn direction. They are looking for help. They're no longer like, if I go back, Will, to the days that you were selling and, a decade before I was selling, My sales teams didn't want advice from me on how to sell. These alpha sellers looked at me like, dude, leave me alone, okay? I'll bring you, like the deals. You just say thank you. That's all I need from you, right? As in that kind days in those days of VP of sales that I was. Nowadays they're actually the opposite. They go like, no, 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 show me how to do it. Like help me. I want you even involved in this deal. And then what we now see is there's a lack of that leadership to teach, to coach, to help the knowledge transfer. But in generally what you do is repetitive training, like you're on right now, 3-4 runs a week, different kind of runs. So too does the new generation need to be coached, taught, helped, mentored on those really good sales skills that we've learned from these excellent, like consultative and provocative salespeople. And it's like you, people like you, myself, others, we carry that responsibility. And I, like as somebody said it, it's a stewardship. I believe that we are the stewards of this knowledge. We have to carry that forward. And I said this to you in the warm up. I won't say, like as loud as I said then. I refuse to sit aside and under my stewardship see that we pursue alpha, primarily alpha male, but also, similarly alpha female, shove it down their throat, kind of like mass outbound cold emailing. I won't stand for it. I won't let it happen. And so I believe that people like that, on this podcast, we need to have a strong voice. We, the professionals who know better, we need to have a strong voice. This is not acceptable. And just you picked that because it was a result that showed up on Google is wrong. It should be properly educated technique. This is a trade. This is a profession. And then, I'll get off my soapbox here, Will. It is one of the rare professions that we have to realize the best performers don't come off with a high academic degree. This means that in many cases, the great sellers are being paid 6-figure salaries. We can make real jobs available to young people who need this, who don't have necessarily a degree. This is available to them the right way. Teach, learn, and so on. That, as you can tell, I'm very, very passionate about that. We need to accomplish that under the stewardship of the current leadership roles that we have. There's plenty out there. There's plenty of great VPs of sales that are doing this. Those are the revered ones. Shep Meyer is one of the people that comes to mind here in the US that I've always highly revered of how he treats his sales organization. That is, I know I went way over the top, but I want you to know that is what we should care about, and I hope that the listeners feel that same level of responsibility and seek me out to let's team up and let's bring this knowledge into the broader population.
Well, look, Jacco, I know you know this. I know regular listeners to the show do as well. I literally created the show because I was looking for guidance. I was looking for someone to help me, some kind of content, a blog, whatever it was, to help me improve my game in medical device sales, because the environment that in the last company especially that I was in, is what you were describing. They only hired ex-competitive athletes. They only hired people. Well, there was one woman on the team and she was pushed out essentially. Numerous reasons why. She was a very good salesperson, but because as a very feminine woman in this very alpha team, she didn't really fit in as well. I didn't fit in because I'm not this 6-pack Greek bodied beautiful dude that most of the sales reps fit into. But I crushed it in the job because I was great at building relationships with surgeons. Nothing more, nothing less. Anyway, I created the show because there was no content out there. The goal of salesman.org, it's slowly coming together. That'll be a completely free resource where you can learn absolutely everything that you need to know to crush it in B2B sales moving forward. And obviously, it's super rapid change of pace at the time. So the podcast is great for creating content to go on there as well because it's more up to date and constantly evolving on that front. But I'm on board with all this with you, Jacco. And with that, mate, I've got one final question. I think I've asked you this in the past. I'm going to ask you it again. If you could go back in time, speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
Yes, it's an advice that I still today have a hard time doing. So I'm not good at it, and I'm trying to be better. What I found, Will, that with you giving me an opportunity to speak to your audience like that, I often feel like, or my initial way is that I want to be the hero to your audience. I'm the one with all the right answers. I'm the one who knows how to do this. I'm the one who has the, and I found that essentially is the wrong way of looking at it. And what I find is that I'm not the hero. Your audience is the hero. This is the big misconception. And I go back, I want to tell to my younger self, don't try to be the hero. Try to help other people to become the hero. This is a massive challenge that I see with many people when they enter on these podcasts, because the setting, the camera, the lights, all that you provide is making me feel the hero, right? When you go on stage. Yet to realize that the responsibility then sits with you having your audience make the hero, that is something I hope that I can master over this next year. I'm not good at it yet. I'll try to do better over the years that I'll probably be. And maybe you can keep a track of me if I'm getting better with my next time I'm on your podcast.
Next time you're on the podcast, I'm going to slap that ego down and I'll do exactly that, Jacco. And with that, mate, we've only very briefly touched the surface of the scientific sales process. You've got a book that when this show is live should be out. So tell us a little bit more about the book and where we can find it.
Yeah, so we've written this book with the intent to pass this knowledge on. The book is called the SaaS Sales Method, and it's in pursuit of sales as a science. In it, I describe all the history, as far as I can and as I understood from enterprise got here today, and put some of the key nuggets in that I've learned from people like Mike Damore, who have been my teachers and coaches over the years. This book is all about, sharing knowledge. I want to make a point that we removed all the use cases. There's absolutely no use cases about other vendors or anything else. We want it pure academic and keep it as clean as possible, where we describe what this is all about. To me, that is important. To me, our knowledge should not be bought. The passing on of this information cannot be, funded by somebody who's trying to tweak the data that they give you. So we did a lot of effort to keep no vendor mentioned in there other than one tool provider that you can access all the tools through that we are providing, combined with a YouTube channel that we're pursuing and that we're adding that you can look me up on as well. That book is called the SaaS Sales Method: The Pursuit of Sales as a Science, and is available by the time this podcast goes live.
Amazing stuff. Well, I'll link to the book and everything else that we talked about in this episode show notes. We'll have it over at salesman.org/powerful Jacco. That'll be the URL, and that's JACCO. And with that, Jacco, I appreciate your time.
No.
Go on.
We did this last time too. You forget to get, now I'm asking you, Will, what was the key takeaway, the one key takeaway that hit you in the face today that you go like, okay, that was either different, unique, or that's something I should do better, or whatever it is.
So 2 things to wrap up. How did you frame them? Moments that matter. In hindsight, I had 2 moments that matter in the sales process of selling to surgeons specifically. Clearly, the huge buying group when you're selling to the NHS, a government body here in the UK, and you're selling anything from 50 grand to a couple of £1 million worth of stuff. But for surgeons, the 2 key moments that matter were the initial demo. If that didn't go well, people would politely say, we tried it. It's not better than what we've got at the moment. You're welcome to come back in the future when you've got new gear. It was as simple as that. And then you'd come back further down the line. But if it did go well, people got excited. A lot of the urologists, the gynecologists, the colorectal surgeons that I worked with are huge nerds. And so if you could show them, wow them on the technology side of all the imaging equipment that I used to sell, they'd be on board and they'd be excited. And then they would then proactively push all of this through procurement, through the management. The other element of it was, and this is again on past the transactional stage, this is when you'd come in to do the actual installation of the product, to do the training of the product. I would do all that myself. There's a product specialist that would occasionally help out. I had an assistant that I would, or not an assistant, an associate salesperson, someone going up the ranks, however you want to describe it. I'd bring them in to help out in these scenarios as well. But that was the other moment. And until you put it in this framework, Jacco, I never really thought about it like that. They were the 2 most important moments of whether the business was going to happen and then whether you'd be invited back in to tender or win new business in the future. It wasn't the fact that they got a good price. It wasn't the fact they got a good service. It was typically that onboarding process, getting all the nursing staff, 55-year-old woman to understand how to use the DVR, the controllers, all the computer stuff that the surgeon knew off by heart, but they weren't that interested. Getting them and convincing them to get excited about it, that was the other moment that matter in the process. They're the 2 things. That was the thing that came to mind, that perhaps I did not make as big of a deal of that as perhaps what I should have. And again, following up on that process with some kind of report of, Jane, the nurse, has learned blah, 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 blah. Barry, the surgeon, has gone through all this and some kind of certification on the training, something like that to make it more official, to get people kind of bought into it. That could have led to more business, easier, with kind of a little bit of effort up front. And just having this paperwork, even just around the office with your brand, your logo, your name on it, following up from that onboarding process, I think that could have been really valuable. So that's what I took away.
Great. Well, that particular blueprint I added to the book along with like 7 others. So, but it's exactly that step by step. How can we create these great moments that matter? How we can teach them? Well, your audience is truly our heroes. So I just do want to extend a warm thank you for once again listening to me. If you get this far, really appreciate you listening to us. Hope that you learned something from it that you can take away, apply. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's one of my favorite podcasts, so really, truly appreciate you having me.
Amazing stuff. Well, with that, Jacco, we appreciate you, sir. And I want to thank you again for joining us on the Salesman podcast.
Have a great one.